Hello and welcome to this episode of the AEC Business Podcast. And today we'll discuss streamlining construction procurement operations. And my name is Arni Heiskanen, and I'm joined by Eric Helitzer, founder and CEO of SubBase, a US company. Thanks for joining us, Eric.
Thanks, Arnie, for having me. I really enjoy these types of shows here.
Well, you can first tell us a bit about your background and what inspired you to found SubBase
Yeah.
originally.
So my background starts from studying construction management at the University of Florida. So I was one of the few who chose the college path of learning the business of construction, learned the ins and outs in school, but quickly realized that what you learn in a textbook in a university does not translate one-to-one with real experience on site. So started interning through the family business, which was a general contractor who exposed me first to the intricacies of building in the South Florida market. Graduated and then started working in the trades, working for a very large concrete company that was just coming into the Miami market during the time of the Miami condo boom. So I was entrenched in that workflow of just labor, material, equipment, as far as tracking and managing, a process and projects. I spent almost 10 years in the trades and then moved back to the family business. The family business did not allow me to come first work with them because they wanted me to get a good field education of how to actually build in the trade. So did that. And then as I came over to the GC world, realized that there was a lot of inefficiencies in how that GC business was running. There were new technologies coming out. One of them called Procore, where people were just starting to hear and see in real life. And so we were one of the first to adopt that type of workflow where you can start to digitize a lot of the paper that was going and moving from the office to an architect and back down to a job site. And so I quickly gravitated towards that, saw how manual the process was at the GC level of just moving a lot of paper documentation, and then realized that there was a lot of missing pieces for the trades, right? The subcontractor world is a lot different. There's a lot of risk when it comes to labor, material, equipment. And this was around the time of COVID, where material pricing was just going through the roof on everyday commodity items and consumables that most people didn't realize. And so, in the field, saw this come to life as far as the struggles that a trade contractor has when it comes to procuring materials, managing those requests in the field from the field to the office if you are centralized, giving project managers a better ability to see their spend in real time, because a lot of what was going on was just, you know, ordering last minute and realizing that the price went up double or triple when an invoice hit your budget a month or two later. So we started building what is now SubBase to streamline all the different layers of communication into a centralized platform, giving the data back right to the field and to the office, while also connecting vendors in one streamlined platform, so that you can really take advantage of the intricacies of how complex some of these workflows are. To date, we're very focused on materials and equipment, but have been focused on really both sides of the market. How do you really gain the efficiencies from the sub side, from the field to the office back in accounting? And how do you also help out the vendor who is also today struggling with keeping up with the amount of orders that are coming in many different shapes and sizes? So that's like where and how we founded SubBase. We solve for, I would say, many different problems, because in materials, even by trade, there's different ways that people procure. There's a lot of data floating around that most people aren't aware of and don't see in real time. So depending on the stakeholder, we solve different problems up and down the value chain when they're inside of SubBase.
Okay, so you started in 2022?
Yeah, we started in a little bit before then, but
Oh,
in
okay.
2022 is when I broke out from the general contracting business I was at, because we were getting a lot of interest in what we were building. But we actually started building SubBase before 2022, just iterating on prototypes in the field.
Okay, yeah. So, since then, how do you see the industry developing or developed?
Night and day. I mean, you're talking about even in 2022 when we started building, not many people were talking about artificial intelligence. It was just, I would say, coming out, and people were like, hearing about it, but they physically weren't seeing it embedded into software as much. From then until now, it's been a totally different game changer as far as, what they're seeing from a workflow perspective. And also the trades, the subcontractors weren't as privy to adopting technology as they are today, and what we're seeing.
Yeah, but many of the problems that you started with are still there in terms of business.
They're still there, and they're still gonna be there for a while considering how large the problem space is and how large the market is, but yeah, that problem has not changed.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so you mentioned AI. So how do you leverage AI and automation?
Many different ways. So how we're leveraging AI is, very basic from a workflow perspective of taking out manual tasks that most people are inundated with on a daily basis. A good example is, when an invoice comes into an email inbox, how can we quickly find the right purchase order within SubBase, match it to that invoice, but go a step further and start to translate what the items you ordered on your order and your purchase order say versus what a vendor calls it. So artificial intelligence is very good with that type of data. Obviously, there's a lot of training that goes on that we do to make sure that, what the field calls something versus what a vendor calls it can be mapped and translated properly. But that's where artificial intelligence has helped a lot in the back office. From the field perspective, right? How do you speak into your cell phone and have a conversation with it through a mobile app where you can also get the materials you need without having to do much search and without having to do much typing? Um, Artificial intelligence is a great thing if you can really train it and put guardrails on it. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the advantages, especially on the material side, is making these very manual tasks as automated as possible, but still giving people control because purchasing is still, there's still a control mechanism involved. It's very relationship based for the most part. It's not completely automated where you just click a button and you just start buying things off the shelf. It's very much relationship driven and very much knowledge base of, what things could be called and what you actually need, which is where AI can actually solve for, but also doesn't replace the human brain of knowing what materials you need on that job site.
Mm. So email still plays a major role in these processes, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, look, emails, that's a good thing if we're looking at a company that's still emailing all their orders and using emails to track where things are going, that's a good thing because that means they have a process in place.
Mm.
Most people that don't have email or don't have a process in place are just making a phone call to place their orders. Typically a little bit harder to digitize that, right? Because that means that there's a change involved in putting a process in place. So emails is still a very, very big part of the procurement process today in construction. Up and down the different trade verticals, email and Excel are probably the two biggest, what I would say, competitors in the space that just are always there because they've been flexible and that's been the status quo. But what we're noticing is those that actually have email in place means that they have a process and they're looking to automate most because a lot of it is manual mundane tasks that are going on day to day.
Yeah, but I also imagine that depending on the company, naturally, they also have some, let's say, legacy software and vendors.
Yes.
So how do you integrate with those, or do you integrate?
Yeah. Um, Legacy software, we can integrate it in many different ways. There are now, there are legacy softwares that are starting to open up APIs. They're starting to open up connectivity points for us, and we do connect into legacy, right? If a legacy system doesn't have any type of open API, there's still ways to move the data, which is very common in today's world because everyone is Excel based for the most part. So I think what people are realizing is that a lot of the legacy systems are they're not going anywhere, right? A lot of companies that are on legacy ERP systems or accounting systems aren't just moving from their accounting systems to a modern system. Sometimes there's not even a modern system out there to move to on the ERP side. So we've learned to work with those legacy systems in many different ways. And a lot of it is Excel based to move data behind the scenes to make sure we can update those ERPs or accounting systems as frequently as possible because we know how hard it is to change in this industry and we mold our tactic or our workflows into how to speak to those older systems as well.
Mm. And now we have seen AI companies launch browsers, specifically AI browsers that can do things like kind of agents.
Yep.
What do you think about those?
I think it's phenomenal. I mean, I think part of like, part of the hard part, right, of materials is there's a lot of steps involved to just get a material from point A to point C, really, because there's a lot of in intermediate steps. I think agents are going to be used to help you buy better, but also help you onboard better. I think part of like the reason why construction technology sometimes is hard to get off the ground is because you're taking old systems that you may not have a system, and you got to also move a lot of the data onto the system. So we see this agentic AI experience not just in the workflow, right, of how you use the software, but how do you actually provide value quickly to get people onboarded a lot faster. And that's where we're headed to as a company, is how do you make that experience so good and make it so easy, that you can actually provide more value quicker to a prospect that's coming into the system.
Well, who's currently using your product or services?
Yeah, it depends on like obviously trade contractors, like specialty trade contractors in certain verticals that really have a lot of pain purchasing, right? So usually a specialty trade contractor is purchasing, on certain cadences every day, every hour. We very much like working with general contractors that do self-perform. So anyone that is touching the material at a certain scale is who we work with. We're noticing more that general contractors, especially ones that are growing, are starting to take that in-house. So we do like working with those types of companies. And then depending on the trade vertical, the concrete space, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing space, the drywall space, those are really where we're seeing a lot of traction because of the amount of purchasing going on an hourly basis. It makes sense for them to start digitizing that process.
Yeah. Can you share any examples of customer success stories, so to speak?
Yeah, sure. A couple of success stories, depending on like if you're looking at success from a ROI on like hard cost savings or labor savings, can kind of go both ways. I can give you kind of two examples. So from a hard cost perspective, a lot of companies that are in obviously in that specialty trade world today don't have a good enough sense of grasping all the orders in real time and all the data of what they're buying, right? And so what we've been able to do is aggregate that data for them so they can start making better bulk buying decisions. Some companies, can see, right, price trends on, certain commodity items where they may want to buy ahead of time because they know that they've got 5 jobs coming up, and they may have a lot of formwork or a lot of certain type of plywood that they need to buy. And if they have that type of insight, knowing that they're going to have to buy it anyways, what we've seen is that they can leverage the data inside their SubBase instance to actually go make a better purchase. And why does that benefit them? Well, it allows them to think ahead of time, being a lot more proactive than this retroactive, hey, I need, 25 sheets of MDO plywood tomorrow. They can foresee in a couple weeks, couple months. It also alleviates some of the lead time congestion issues we've seen where vendors have to accommodate these bigger orders. So from a hard cost perspective, we've seen companies save anywhere from 6 to 7 figures inside of SubBase because they can aggregate all of the data in one spot and be able to make better decisions, buying it in either bulk or being more proactive knowing they have jobs coming up. From a soft cost savings perspective, right? This is just time. Like how much time can we free up from the back end office, getting those invoices cost coded properly with the field, and then getting those into a budget? Today it's very manual. Almost every invoice that comes into a company has to be manually entered into a budget because every company that wants to survive here on the subcontractor side has to pay their bills, which is those material invoices coming in. So we've seen the cost dramatically reduce in time to getting that invoice from it taking hours, if not days, because it's lost in emails, it's printed out on paper, to instantaneously matching, as long as you're in SubBase, kicking off a workflow where you can see where those are in real time. And then depending on how integrated you are with your accounting system, moving those with the click of a button into your accounting system, properly cost coded in real time. So we've seen companies save hundreds of hours, if not thousands of hours a month, just because of the nature of how manual it is today to get those material invoices into a spot where you can kind of see it update in your budget in real time. So two different use cases, but really providing two different types of values on that ROI piece.
Hmm. Um, there are some other procurement platforms around, but how do you what sets you apart?
I mean, a lot of it is understanding the problem. Like materials is very complicated. different trades purchase differently. There's different companies that purchase in different siloed workflows. Coming from the space, really, we got to see it firsthand, and we knew that in order to really do well in this space, you had to be flexible. You had to make the platform flexible and don't mold people into a workflow they're not used to. Now, there are bad habits for certain companies, right? Certain companies want a better process, but we really understood like how to take what the problem space was, which is a very complicated problem. Materials is complicated, right? But being as flexible as possible, allowing us to, go deeper into some nuanced workflows that most trades don't understand. Electrician purchases a lot different than a concrete company, but we can do both on one platform with different trades because of the flexibility that we understood from the get-go, given our knowledge of the industry.
Okay,
The other
but
thing that
yeah, sorry.
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
the other thing that sets us apart, right, is understanding that it's not a one-sided market, meaning you have to make sure that your vendors are having a great experience because that's really where the big, ticket numbers are, and how do you get your vendor to make sure that they are servicing you properly? And so when you combine both of those, that's really been a big driver of our success inside the platform.
Yeah, but one thing, as a also been a software developer. One thing that is kind of sometimes dangerous is too much flexibility, too much
Mhm.
tailoring. How do you avoid that?
Yeah, it's a great point because if you have too much flexibility, then you're kind of too horizontal. You don't really solve some of the problems really good. But the way that we solve that is we want to make sure that we're listening to the customer, right? Because the customer is really what's driving a lot of the way we've built the platform. But B, we also want to make sure that one customer that comes into the system doesn't overhaul the roadmap, knowing that it is something that can be valuable for all different trades. And a lot of like what we're doing is making sure that we do phenomenal discovery along the whole process. The process from, a discovery call when we first meet you on the sales side, a discovery call when we implement you, and we continuously are discovering. And we take all this information and we do feed it back to our product teams. We have our engineering teams that are still involved in customer success because we want to hear to make sure that we are trending in the right direction with multiple data points and not just making software decisions based off of one company that may be purchasing a lot or may have a problem, right, with something that we've done holistically. So discovery is a really big motto for us, and we're always learning. And we're also wanting to make sure that we can provide best practices for companies where we've seen other companies be successful inside the platform that may not want to change, but may look at things a little bit differently from a process perspective.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned already that onboarding is really critical, but
Mhm.
what are the if you think about a typical construction subcontractor or general contractor, what are the difficulties they have in implementing anything new? How do you solve that?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's not a one size fits all problem, right? That has a one size fits all solution. Um, so how we solve it is, well, first of all, some of the problems, right? Let's start with the problems. The problems are when most people are buying software in construction, they're not bringing in every team member. Okay, they're bringing in some of the decision makers. They'll have some of the people involved, right, in the decision based on who is going to touch the platform. And one of the first things we want to make sure is that we're aligned from the top. We want to make sure that the top down, who's usually the ones making the decision of change, bringing in software, is thoroughly aligned with why they've made the decision in the first place, right? This could be with data points. This can be with just the fact that the company is growing and the amount of headcount that it's going to take to actually get things done is going to need software because it's very hard to find, the right people. And also with new technology, you can do a lot more with some great people in your company. So the first thing to implementation and the first thing to anything is, hey, do you have that top down buy-in? We've seen time and time again where the top may or may not purchase it. Maybe they do purchase software, and that's it. It gets handed off to people that were never in the buying process, were never brought in the process to understand where their problems are. And that's been, some of the things we've seen as friction points in the industry is it's not like you can bring your whole company in to make a software decision. If that would happen, no one would be buying software. But what we are noticing is that if you have that top-down buy-in first, and the top-down is really projecting the narrative as to why they are looking to solve this problem, you can actually get very far along the process, right? The
Yeah.
second piece is the discovery piece. We want to learn your business so well, and we want to see how you're doing things today, because once you've got the top-down buy-in, the next thing you got to make sure of is that you don't flip everything over on its head and then take every process out that's been in your business for 20, 30 years because you've been buying materials that long, and just all of a sudden flip it and say, hey, this is how we're going to do it moving forward, without really understanding the process, right? And so we stress always on phenomenal discovery and making sure we can see, right, and really understand from each stakeholder, where are the problems along that we could solve for, and where are the things that, hey, we know we're not doing right, that we are willing to change. And some of that may be a process, some of it may be, how you interact with the field. And that's like been a big piece of like us understanding your business, because we are a part of your business. We're not just a software company. We're helping you implement, we're helping you save money, save time, and we're growing with your company as well. Um, yeah, sorry, I'll let you talk there, because there's a lot of problems with like how software gets implemented today that I can talk about.
Yeah, but there's also the buy-in from those workers who actually interact with your system. They
Yes.
also have to, and sometimes it can even happen. I've heard that sometimes it's the opposite. It's like bottom-up approach. That
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
We've been working with companies in multiple directions. We have seen bottom up work. The problem with bottom up that we've seen in materials is, and when we say bottom, we're just talking about who's the one that like cares about
Mm,
materials because they want to get it to their job to build, versus all the way back in the office when it comes to like the accounting piece. The field, right, cares about a couple things. Where's my material? I want it now, and like I know who I'm buying it from, and I want to make that so easy. Sometimes the field is not involved in the cost coding budget perspective of that material making it into an accounting system. So you could attack the problem from both spaces, and we've done that before, where we'll go from the field up and then the office down and merge in the middle to make sure that we're aligned on the problem. But what we've noticed is, a lot of people don't really have the insights to understand like where the bottlenecks are, because they're living in those silos.
mm.
So when you bring the process all together, which is why we do that discovery, we can see where the breakdown could happen. Is the breakdown occurring at the fact that like your field doesn't have a material database to essentially request items? Are all your orders coming from a committed order and not necessarily drawing like, and then are drawing down, and you don't have visibility into a budget? Do you even have a warehouse, right? Are you looking to draw down from stock? There's so many things that happen in procurement, which is why you do need both the field and the office on the same page, because without that, you can do a great demo, but you can't really get the value of implementing, you know?
Yeah, and it's also possibly a learning moment for everybody to see how it actually works as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. And there's always things that, people want more of. And
Yeah,
then they're like nice to have, and there's like, hey, what do you actually need to go live and to show that ROI quickly is where we're focused on.
yeah. Well, now that you've been around for a few years, what's on the product roadmap for the next, like, let's say 12, 18 months? What you can tell
Yeah. Yeah,
publicly?
there's some stuff that we can tell high level is we mentioned before on the artificial intelligence side, going
Mm,
deeper, right,
mm.
into AI in many different ways. Going deeper into AI with a lot of the data to make sure that, both sides of the platform are getting better insights on like the data piece, right? And what I mean by that is like, hey, a lot of what, the field calls something versus what a vendor calls something is very difficult to translate. We want to help the translation, help speed up the order process, and really help people, come into SubBase faster by using a lot of artificial intelligence. The technology's out there, it's working today, and we're doubling down on all that, right? Not just from a workflow perspective, but like I talked about, from that onboarding experience, because onboarding, material management software is not trivial. It's not a flip of a switch, and next thing you know, right, you're all of a sudden, dialed in with all your materials and everything. It takes a process. We're also going deeper into other, I would say, deeper into other parts of the workflow that are similar to materials, like equipment, right? We have a lot of people in SubBase now using equipment. We have a lot of great things on the roadmap. can't share too much about it, but we definitely see a lot of cross overlap there with how vendors and how subcontractors and general contractors sub-performing are managing that aspect as well outside of materials. Um, and then the final piece is we're excited to go deeper with vendors. When I say vendors, we're talking about material suppliers. They have many problems too that we want to solve. We've got many of them in the system today that are working with their end users, and they want to provide a better experience. And we know that they want to be able to provide a better experience, provide better insights, and be able to obviously service their customer a lot better than just the manual emails and texts coming across. It's very hard to keep up with the demand, and we're not seeing this like projects slow down. We're seeing more projects come in. We're seeing more subcontractors that need more the headcount just to keep up with the new projects that they have on their backlog. So we're very cognizant of kind of servicing both sides of the marketplace right now.
Okay. Yeah, very good. Um, One thing that we are doing here in Finland right now is trying to standardize the product data that is flowing across these processes. Do you see any standardization happening in the future regarding materials and products?
100%. We're working on that constantly. There's definitely gonna be that. There's definitely a lot of work to be done. We're fortunate enough that in this time with artificial intelligence, it is something that you can use as a tool to accelerate, but it still takes a lot of work and a lot of understanding on how to kind of translate and map all this data back into, right, like one centralized source of truth. But yes, 100% think that that is more than possible. It's stuff that we're seeing in our platform today that is happening that we're leveraging more of because it's a big piece of how you get value out more than just the workflow pieces is the value of like that type of material data.
Well, there are nowadays so many startups in the construction technology domain. Uh, what kind of advice would you share with others in this other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think if you're just like coming and starting out in this space, I think having a really deep focus on like building for like one subset of the problem is the most critical because the I mean, look, for any entrepreneur coming to the space, right, time is what's not on your side. And time is something that you can't just buy off the shelf. You've got to be able to really think through what's the problem that you're going to solve and go even deeper with a focus. The focus of like anything that really resonates with the problem you're looking to solve for. And I do agree that you should go pretty deep in the beginning, but you don't want to go so deep that you kind of box yourself out of the opportunities as you come out. But I definitely think of focus right now because there's a lot of different problems to be solved out there, and the problems can stretch really horizontal. So I think the one thing I would give advice on is like to really go and focus on a subset of that problem first to prove out that you have something that's worth solving for. That would be like my suggestion versus trying to go in and being so horizontal, even with your ICP, right? Kind of trying to touch everyone. Where if you kind of honed in and focused, you'd probably get a lot more traction.
Well, you started with your story, and you have been boots on the ground, so to speak. So,
Yeah,
is that necessary if has a fantastic idea, but they lack that industry experience? Uh, how do you
yeah.
get? Is that necessary, or should you
I
partner
would
with somebody?
I would say it's necessary. If you are physically not going to go do it yourself, then you better partner with someone that really understands it. I've seen this time and time again where people from outside the industry come into the industry. They believe that, hey, building this type of product we can do because we built it already for these different types of companies. But I would I would say that my opinion, and I've seen it for almost 20 years now, either go find someone that is really baked in there or just live on in these companies and on these job sites and learn as much as you can because it's way different seeing the nuances even on a construction site or in an office than it is hearing about it or being on a Zoom call and talking about your problems. Like that is very hard to see and touch and feel. And so I would 100% with no question say that that is a requirement to be successful. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Finally, where can our audience find more information on SubBase?
Yeah, so couple of ways. We're obviously our website, so it's just SubBase SUBBASE.io, or we're very active on LinkedIn. So myself on my page or our LinkedIn SubBase page, super active there. And we are active there because we love the LinkedIn community. There's a lot of ideas being shared, and a lot of construction tech people are now embracing on LinkedIn. So that's a big one for us. So those two are pretty fair where you can find us.
Okay. Eric, this has been a fantastic discussion, and all the best with your business.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate these types of conversations. It's great.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe to this podcast and visit aec-business.com, the award-winning blog, for more news and stories.